The aim with tonight's stream, because here's the thing. Like, I don't know about anybody else out there, but like, I'm always curious what somebody's story is, right? Like, how did somebody get the opportunity to do the thing that they're doing, right? What were the steps? How did they get to that point, right? And how come I can't get to that point too, right? I know, Sharice, Vesper, you're just going to have to keep it tucked in, keep it sane, all right? So welcome in, everyone. Any lurkers we might have out there. So what I want to do is kind of take it from the beginning and kind of explain how it was that I landed the gig composing the soundtrack. What's up, A&R? So I wanted to explain that because ultimately I want to put this up as a YouTube video. I want people to, have access to that information, because that's always what I'm curious about. I'm always curious about how people got that opportunity, how they got to now, right? I wanted to start by just explaining kind of where I got from, and then we're going to go through the soundtrack. We're going to explain some of the, what's up, Matt? How you doing, buddy? Thank you. We're going to kind of go through the soundtrack, talk about some of the themes, talk about some of the inspirations, things like that. If anybody has questions, feel free to just shout them out. I don't have an exact structure for this. I just wanted to be able to talk about the soundtrack and answer questions if people had questions. I got my start on Twitch making Super Mario Maker levels. Very silly thing, but very fun. I went to college, classically trained musician. I am a percussionist by trade. What's up, Starblazer? A percussionist by trade. And yes, exactly. Focusing on the marimba. Thank you, Sharice, over there. And so I got started on Twitch, not as a streamer, but just by going into chats and watching people play my Mario Maker levels, because I made music levels in Mario Maker. If you go onto YouTube and you search com_poser and Mario Maker, you'll see tons of videos about of people playing my levels. And so one such streamer is a guy named Barbarous King, this guy right here. Twitch.tv/Barbarous King. He started making a ROM hack, which is Super Mario World ROM hack, for a friend of his. And I offered to make some music for that game. Yeah, that guy right there. People are posting in chat. That guy. Barb says hello to you. Say hi to everyone. Barb was working on this game called Grand Poo World 2. And I contributed some music to it. And so I'm going to show you a quick clip here. This game got played at GDQ, and I have the clip all queued up here. So let's cut to here and let's cut to here. Are you ready? Professional streaming strats. There we go.
From the last level. I love that. That's like such a nice little touch. And also, banger alert on the track right now.
Yeah, shout out to Composer. Composer is Composer, Dan the VP, G Gamer, a number of people helped me. I'm not a musician. I can't make music, and the Grand World 2 would not be the same game without their insane efforts. So thank you to them.
So yeah, I don't know if you could see in the audience over there, people were like pointing. I was the person they were pointing to. I was at that GDQ. And so that's the game. It was a Super Mario World ROM hack. I was working on some music for Barbarous King. Barb, we all call him Barb. And somebody who works for Modus Games, one of the producers of Cris Tales, watches Barb stream apparently because he's got very good taste. And at the time they were looking for, they were auditioning composers for Cris Tales, and they hadn't quite settled on one yet. They had, kind of searched high and low. What's up, Soulfish? So they had been looking to audition some composers, and Derek, the gentleman who works at Modus, he reached out to me on Discord, and he was like, hey, I see that you made this music for Barb for Grand Poo World 2, which, by the way, it's called Grand Poo World 2 because the ROM hack was dedicated to another streamer called Grand Pooh Bear, in case you're wondering why I've said the word poo so many times. Yo, what's up, Jollyball? And so Derek reached out to me and was like, hey, would you be interested in interviewing for this? We have this studio in Columbia that they are making a game that is, trying to be a spiritual successor. Yes, I am the composer for Cris Tales, Dragon. Welcome. That's me. Derek reached out to me, set me up an interview with Carlos, who is the main man behind Cris Tales, and said they're making a game that's spiritual successor, inspired by Chrono Trigger, the 90s RPGs of the era, right? Oh, yes, that's me. That's me, Dragon. Hello. Welcome in. We're going to listen to some of the music tonight. You watch Grand Pooh Bear a lot? Yep, I am, and we're telling the story right now, Dragon. You're hearing the tale of how it all came to pass. What's up, Rainbow? You're just in time. Don't you even worry about it. So, Derek reached out to me. He got me an interview with Carlos. Carlos and I, this was probably we got on the phone at probably 6 o'clock at night, my time, on a Friday. And I think we talked until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. We easily talked for 3-4 hours. We talked about, his thoughts about the game, what he wanted it to be, what he wanted the music to be. Now, what you need to know, thanks for those 10 bits, is that at that point, I had done music projects on and off throughout my 20s. I'm in my late 30s now. I know I don't look that old, but I am. I'm an old man. I had done music on and off in my 20s, but I had more or less given up possibility of making a career out of music, right? And so I didn't really have a portfolio. I didn't have you want to hire me for this job? Let me show you my body of work, right? I mostly had stuff in my 20s that I was embarrassed about that I didn't want people to ever listen to ever, right? And so Carlos was like, hey, can you put together proof of concept? Can you knock something out for us and get it sent, see whether or not you'd be a good fit? So I spent all weekend working on a piece of music. Right, Tyler? Yes. That is may the work of my 20s never see the light of day, right? So, and of course, that's not the stuff that I want Carlos or anyone else on the Cris Tales team to use as the basis for my consideration for employment, right? So, I spent the whole weekend, I stayed up until midnight, 1 o'clock that night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, working on a piece that was just about a minute and a half long. It's maybe a minute and 19 seconds, something like that. Yeah, what's up, King? And I submitted it to him. It was received okay. Carlos came back and he's like, we like it, but we don't love it. Here's some things that we'd like to see different. Yo, what's up, Gandalf Lundgren? Greatest name on Twitch, by the way, Gandalf Lundgren. If there are kids in the audience that don't get that joke, ask your parents. They'll think it's hilarious. So, he's, chat with Carlos afterwards. He's like, this is what we like. This is what we don't like. And I was like, good. I'm glad you don't like it because I already don't like it. And here are the things that I want to fix about the piece, right? Oh, yeah. You should mouse over his name. And so we had those back and forth conversations. And ultimately, and I think I waited for maybe 4 or 5 days, maybe a little over a week before I heard back. And to my surprise, they chose me to be the go forward guy. And so that's really how I got on the project. I bought Mario Maker because I learned that you could make music levels in Mario Maker, and I thought that was really cool. I got on Twitch because I wanted people to play my levels. As popularity in my levels rose, I started asking other Twitch streamers what kind of music they wanted in their Mario Maker levels. That segued into working on Super Mario World ROM hacks, which was something I had no idea how to do, but I convinced Barbarous King that I knew how to do it, even though I didn't. And I spent like a week figuring that out, made some music for some ROM hacks. Just so happened serendipitously that somebody who worked for Modus Games, who was looking for a composer at the time, watched Barb's stream, was interested in me, emailed me, got me the interview. I somehow didn't screw up the interview, and I landed the job, right? And now it's just the problem of actually like writing the music for the game, right? Yeah, I'm 100% fake it until you make it. 100%. Yeah. Hey, look, guys, I have imposter syndrome. It's going to take a while to peel that Band-Aid off, okay? So that's how I ended up landing the gig, right? That's how I got the job. Some guy in the middle of Iowa, with no resume, no nothing, just a willingness to like keep trying harder the next time. I don't know if it's a great story, Tyler. I appreciate that. It's like maybe a 7 out of 10 story, but that's the imposter syndrome again. So anyways, when I got brought on to do the game, they had already commissioned one piece of music, which is the music for the town of Nareem. Yo, what's up, Owl Puzzle? And so the very first thing that we have to specify about the soundtrack and about the game is that there is one piece of music in the game that I did not compose. That piece of music is the Town of Nareem theme that was written by Norihiko. I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation. I meant to have this pulled up. Norihiko Hibino. I'm probably butchering that. I apologize to everyone. You might know him from his work on, say, Metal Gear Solid or Snake Eater or Bayonetta, right? And so they had brought him in to write that first piece, The Town of Nareem. And so that piece was not written by me, and that's why it is not included on the official soundtrack over here. The decision came from the publisher to not include it. So it's not my call there. But so the Town of Nareem is not on here. It's written by Norihiko, not by myself. If you came in here and you were like, I absolutely loved that Town of Nareem music. Everything else was so, but that Town of Nareem music was chef's kiss, right? Well, to go thank somebody else. Go thank him on his Twitter, right? Yeah, you got to rise to the opportunities that you get, and you don't know where you'll... Yes, exactly. Exactly, Tyler. Do you think having that one piece made of this... so yes, Glorious Rainbow, that did kind of help. It informed somewhat the direction moving forward. I had a talk with Carlos about that piece of music, what he liked about the music, what he didn't like about the music, what his general thoughts were about the game moving forward, right? Did I have to match the style of that music? Well, the style that Norihiko wrote in was more or less the style that I thought, like, I am a symphonic composer. Like, I can do some electronic stuff. I can do some rock and roll stuff, right? But like, I'm not an EDM composer. I'm not a dance electronica composer. Like, 90% of what I write is something that should be recreated by a symphony orchestra, right? So like that was already my wheelhouse. Thank you, Renetta, for working on those. Renetta, one of my ace mods over here, he's creating some automations there, some commands. So if you want to read some reviews of what people have had to say about Cris Tales or the soundtrack, he's getting that set up. Thank you, Renetta. I appreciate that. So yeah, so it was already sort of in my style, right? So what Norihiko had done already more or less fit my expectations for what Carlos was looking at for the music. Because it's an inspiration to a 90s RPG. And so yes, Light Batif, do you like that? We're very clever here, very clever. We're almost as clever as we are good at writing music. So So the objective going in, right, was to write something that felt like it could exist in a SNES era RPG, right? Even though we have this full orchestra at our disposal, right? We want something that like it felt like it could be distilled down into 8 monophonic channels, right? That it could exist as a Super Nintendo port, right? And so that was kind of my aim, was that I was writing pieces that were only like 60 to 90 seconds long, kind of that sweet spot, that had very catchy hooks, very singable melodies, but also something that wasn't so dense that it couldn't be distilled down into its core components, right? And so that was kind of our aim going forward, right? And so I liked what Norihiko had done. I referenced some of the themes that Norihiko wrote for the town of Narim in other pieces. Yes, exactly. It's got to pass the whistle test. And Tyler, can I tell you, that's one of the most satisfying things about watching people play the game on Twitch is watching the streamers hum along or sing along the melody. Like that tells me that like I did my job, right? So that was kind of our aim, right? Plus, I knew that the game was going to have random enemy encounters, and I knew that, you know, the player wasn't going to see the enemies in the dungeons, right? And so I figured that at best, you know, the average player, if they're actively playing through the game, they're only going to get maybe 30, 40 seconds into an area, moving around an area before they might encounter another random enemy. Thank you, Warnett. I really appreciate that, buddy. Thank you so much. And so I wanted to make sure the first 30 or so seconds of the music was like the really solid dynamic A theme, right? But that if the player stuck around and like kind of just let the music roll out, that they would get something surprising on the back half, right? That's awesome, Al Puzzle. Thank you. I'm happy to hear that. So yeah, so that was kind of the inspirations going in, right? It was going to be primarily orchestral music. The team at Dreams and Sick, they were a fan of like the upbeat, like rock and roll orchestra sound that uses like the electric guitar as well. And so I managed to convince Carlos not to let us have electric guitar in every piece of music, but to kind of reserve the electric guitar for the battle themes. And so to that end, like the electric guitar in Cris Tales kind of serves as Chris Bell's like spirit for adventure, in that the very first battle theme, the guitar is very animated, very lively. It has a solo in it, right? Because the nature of the adventure seems lighthearted to start. But then as the battle themes progress, it kind of distills a little bit as Chris Bell is getting beaten down by the challenges that the game is facing, right? Is putting in front of her. And so when I got brought on, we basically had like 6 or 7 pieces that we needed to write in time for a demo. That very first demo, what's up, Poo Spaghetti? That very first demo that was released on Steam. So we already had a town theme. We needed like a 30-second trailer piece. We needed overworld music. We needed a battle theme, a boss battle theme, and we wanted to write a piece of music for the lake house where you meet Wilhelm. And so let's see, battle theme, boss battle, overworld, lake house. And I think that might have been it for the very first. And I also wrote some town music for Narim. We didn't end up using it for the town of Narim music, but it got repurposed later. And I'll explain that when we get to that piece. But yeah, for now, let's take a listen. This, the very first piece on the soundtrack is a piece that went through a couple revisions. I had made a couple different trailer spots based on some early cuts of some video, some cinematic, right? Some cinematic trailers. And this version that we have now is, you know, the latest version of that. We knew that we wanted this opening cinematic in the game. And so I retooled a bit some music that we had written for a trailer that I don't think we ended up, that didn't end up going out or got changed, or Modus put different music over it, something like that. So we had some music that had written but didn't really go anywhere. So we repurposed it. And so this initial piece of music that we're going to listen to here, there's not a lot in terms of, is the music that was in the demo yours? Yes. Everything in the game is mine with the exception of that Town of Narim theme. We discussed that a couple of minutes ago. Yeah, that was composed by Norihiko Hibino. Everything else was composed by me. So from the demo, final version was all mine with the exception of that one piece. There was some stuff that played in promotional material, some trailers that came out where somebody at Modus just, had one of their editors just find a random piece of royalty-free music and slap that in the trailer. So there are some promotional spots that feature music that is not mine, but a couple spots that do. And the opening cinematic from the game is my music. And so there's not a ton of motivic ideas that persist through the rest of the game in this piece. Because it was written pretty early on. The thing that you will notice is Cris Bell's theme, which plays at the very beginning of the introduction, and it's this theme right here. It's also the theme that you see in the graphic for the soundtrack, the Cris Tales soundtrack, and this is the theme. Right, that theme right there. You'll hear it right at the very beginning, very kind of lyrical and sweet in the woodwinds. And I specifically start off on the fourth of the chord, of the tonic chord, because I wanted it to sound like Cris Bell's final, her fate had not been sealed yet, right? She didn't start on the tonic. We didn't start the piece on a third. We started the piece on the fourth, moving up to the fifth, which is also kind of ambiguous. Right? And so I wanted that for Cris Bell's theme because I wanted the implication that at this moment, at the start of the story, her fate hadn't really been determined, right? So we start out with a nice little sus chord, right? So we have that. And then when the Time Empress shows up in the trailer, you hear an augmented chord. And I do use augmented chords randomly, not randomly, throughout the soundtrack as kind of a device for something bad's about to happen, right? It also ends up playing into the end game pieces and the final boss themes. And so we'll get into those later. But I've done enough talking, right? Let's do some listening. Any reason for E major? It's actually in a minor key. I transpose it around, but I think I started out with E minor just because it was a key that I could easily play on the piano. Like there's not a specific reason where like it was E instead of C or anything like that. I think, just as I was messing around, I landed on that key. It gets transposed all over the place. But yeah, let's take a listen to a piece. Oh wait, was there a question, Matt? How much of the game was complete before you were brought on? By the time I was brought on, they had the Town of Narim. So basically, what you play in the demo, where you have the Town of Narim, the overworld, the very first part of the overworld, the lake where you meet Wilhelm, and then like the farm fields where you have the battle, and like that whole initial segment where you battle in the farm fields, you cut to Cris Bell with the rose, you have to find Matthias, you have to do the apothecary mission to choose, or, the label mission to choose whether or not you're going to save the apothecary or save the miller's house. All of that through the circle back to the boss fight, with the Volcano Sisters. They had that, and they were just starting to work on the Saint Clarity portion of the game. I think they had some of the forest dungeon built out, which is that first dungeon you go to after you leave Narim. But they really only had like that much of it built that I saw, right? Was I commissioned to write a specific number of minutes? We kind of had an agreement on what we thought the average length of music needed to be for a piece that for most pieces, we didn't need something that was longer than, say, 80 to 90 seconds. There were some pieces that when we talked about them were like, this piece needs to be at least 2 minutes long, or, this piece needs to be a little longer. But for the most part, we agreed that like, that most towns didn't need something that was more than maybe, a minute 15 to a minute 45, right? We didn't write a lot of really lengthy pieces. And like I said, particularly for like because you have random boss or random enemy encounters, and that music is going to reset once you're out of the battle. And so if we write something that's 3 minutes long, unless the player stands still for 3 minutes, they're never going to hear the whole thing, right? And so that was right around the time that I got brought in. Like I said, they were getting ready to do a release of the demo, and I think maybe 3 months out. And they needed music for that demo, right? So I had to write those pieces to round out the demo. And so this first piece on the soundtrack was not one of those pieces, but we'll go ahead and take a listen to it now. It's just 30 seconds long, and you'll hear the start of the piece with Chris Bell's theme as Chris Bell is seen on screen. I mean, it's not going to be up here. These are just still images, but I'm sure you've seen it a couple of times now. And so, like I said, you heard Chris Bell's theme right there at the intro, and then you hear her theme get interrupted with that augmented chord, right? Those stacked major thirds. And so I had been working on a theme for Chris Bell at the time that we were working on that. But like I said, beyond that, everything else about that introduction bit was just about me trying to match the cut. I had seen a version of a rough version of the video, and so I went through and I marked out, okay, here's where the scene changes, here's a scene change, here's a scene change, and I marked out all of those timestamps, and then I tried to find a tempo marking that closely approximated where all of those big cuts were in the video. And then I just worked against those cuts, right? Knowing that like, okay, this thing can only be 3 bars long. This thing can only be 4 bars long because I want a big downbeat here when the video transitions, right? You must say the different interruptions in there do indeed cause the listener to be destabilized. What are you saying, Speed? I think you're saying something nice about me, but I'm not 100%. So yeah. So that was just the trailer. They included it at the start of the game. We included it in the OST. It's a nice way to kick off the soundtrack. Like I said, the Nareem piece is not on the soundtrack. So the very next thing that we go to is the Cathedral of the Mothers, right? Which you hear at the start of the game. You hear it in the church. And this Cathedral of the Mothers piece introduces effectively our magic theme for the game. And this is another big thing that persists throughout Cris Tales, is that anything that is magical in nature is in a triplet time signature. And so if the character or the scene or the place involves magic, it is in a 3/4 or a 6/8 time. It is in a triplet subdivision, right? And so starting out with the Cathedral of the Mothers, which was written in G sharp minor. It's written in a it's written in a Dorian mode, which seemed kind of odd, but it worked out. Oops. And it has a lot of nice dissonances between the top and bottom voices, which creates a lot of nice tension, a lot of nice push-pull. Right? Sounds really beautiful when the choirs are singing it. And so this was a piece that I just banged out on piano and debated for a really long time whether or not it could sound holy, whether or not it could sound religious, right? But once I put the piece together, it seemed to work out. Carlos and the team really loved it. And so that brought about the triplet time, or the 3/4 time for anything magic related. And that introduced our magic theme, which if we're in major, you can kind of consider that in a Lydian, right? If we had a B natural in the bass. And so that is our magic theme, and that gets us to Cathedral of the Mothers. Let's take a listen. And then there's our loop. And so I saw some question in chat. Vesper, I did all the vocals myself. I layered all of those vocals in. No, there is a sound library from East West. I think it's called Hollywood Choirs, where it allows you to write phrases for choirs to sing, right? So you go in and you write the vowel or the consonant sounds, and the choir sings it, right? But it requires a lot of adjustments to make everything sound like it lines up on the beat, because sometimes the choir will have a really long start to a note. Sometimes they'll have a very short start to a note. And so I actually wrote the words that the choir is singing, but I didn't want it to sound like they were actually saying anything that made sense in any language. I wanted it to sound like it was some like ancient language, right? So that it didn't matter whether you were playing it in America or Colombia or Germany or France or what have you, right? That it just sounded like some sort of ancient, extinct dialect, right? And so, that's what, so that the choir is not singing anything in particular. If you play it backwards, it's not gonna like say something interesting like, drink your Ovaltine or anything like that. So like there's no hidden message in the choir music. I just wanted to make sure it didn't sound too much like any particular word, right? As far as the organ, versus piano, that was another decision I made about the game. So as I mentioned, I'm a percussionist by trade, so I love using percussion instruments. I love the sharp transient attack of percussion sounds, as opposed to like the very delayed sounds of pretty much every other instrument that's not a percussionist, that can't just go and make a sound, right? Give me that sharp hit, right? So the game is called Cris Tales. And it's game's called Cris Tales. Crystals feature in the game, right? That's where the magic of the game comes from. So I made sure that the soundtrack had a lot of crystal sounds in it, right? So there's a lot of piano, celeste, bells, chimes, harpsichord, hammered dulcimer, right? And so that was part of the choice for the piano over the organ, because I didn't want this music to sound heavy. I wanted it to sound angelic, sound lifted, right? And I felt like the organ was a little bit too heavy there, right? and the piano had that more crystalline sound, right? Because I knew that this would be a piece of music that would get used elsewhere throughout the game and that I would use to build other themes on. And so, plus piano is better than organ, fight me. So like on a personal level, like I like the sound of piano, but like I said, that's kind of what the thought process was, about using the piano there instead of the organ. This was probably only like I think I wrote both battle themes, and then I wrote a town theme, and then I wrote this piece. So this was only like the fourth or fifth piece that I wrote for the game, and I would have written it back. I just went and actually looked in my my Gmail, and February of 2019 was when I had that initial conversation with Carlos. And so that piece of music is a little over 2 years old at this point, right? The only problem with harpsichord is that it has no dynamic adjustments, right? It doesn't matter how hard you hit the note, you get one sound, right? Yes, exactly. It does sound light without sounding sparse. Yes, thank you, Alpuzzle. So that was one of the very first pieces I wrote, 100% inspired by the cathedral music at the start of Chrono Trigger, where they go to find Queen Lean, right? Your kind of very first dungeon in Chrono Trigger. So there were definitely some inspirations there. I'm a big Yasunori Mitsuda fan. I don't think anybody will contest that. And so I think the cathedral piece certainly draws some inspiration from that as well. Originally it was only about 60 seconds long. I love Frog's theme. Yeah. So it was about 60 seconds long. And then before the game released, I presented them with a longer version of it that had about 30 extra seconds. So you have the big choir climax at the end of the first section, and then you have that fade out where it's just like the piano reduction and the cello. I wanted that in there so that you had a little bit more time to breathe before it looped back and played again, right? So it sounded like it had a little bit of rest before the repeat. So that extra 30 seconds was not in the original demo. It is in the final version of the game. Let's see, did I miss any other questions in chat? I did, Charisse. Okay. I heard that it was played at the Olympics, that Frog's theme was played at the Olympics. Yo, what's up, Ampersand? So that's Cathedral of the Mothers. And then that takes us into the next piece in the soundtrack, which is The Journey Across the World. This is our main core overworld theme. And this piece of music, I wrote this piece of music like in a day. And I mean, like, I had an idea for it. Thanks so much, Ampersand. I had an idea for the piece of music, but it was like one of those, like, we need this in the game by tomorrow. What can you get us by tomorrow? Right, sort of deal. And so, as I mentioned previously, I have some music from my 20s that should never, ever see the light of day, right? But I had written a little, like, upbeat acoustic pop instrumental track, like something that didn't have any vocals over it, but something that was just kind of like a catchy piano melody with like bass drum, or with drum set and bass guitar, right? And that's essentially what the overworld theme became. This. We got a nice half diminished here. And so that was the basic idea that I had. And the thing that I really liked about that, as far as an overworld theme went, is that the bass line is constantly moving up. It's changing every bar. So it feels like you're going somewhere right from the very beginning, right? You don't stay still for too long. I also love a sharp 4 or a flat 5 to 3 resolution. Or wait, no. What did I? Yeah, flat 5 or sharp 4. This. You will hear that all over JRPG music as well. Other composers who compose for JRPGs, they love that sound as well. You'll hear it in the Rainbow Lakes music as well. Tyler, I don't know if you're still here and you can vouch that you also love this resolution. Right? So I use that a lot. So this is the Journey Across the World. This is a piece that I had mocked up in the dredges of my computer from, 5-10 years ago that I never did anything with. But I'm like, hey, this sounds like overworld music. Let's, punch something up and see what it works, right? Thanks so much, Epicurious. And so here is Journey Across the World. So yeah, that's Journey Across the World. In the left ear, I didn't have headphones on. You might be hearing some acoustic guitar. There's some panned acoustic guitar in that track. So that was Journey Across the World. It kind of ends. Its turnaround has a little bit of uncertainty in it, right? Because I wanted the piece to still be upbeat and like, we're going on an adventure, right? Still kind of sprightly and pleasant. But I wanted it to have that slight moment at the end before the turnaround where it sounds like things might not be, things might not be all terrific, right? That there might be a little bit of uncertainty out there in the world. And so it ends kind of on a question before it loops back. Yes, this will hopefully, yes, go up to YouTube. Yes, that's why the stream looks so professional right now, is because we want to make sure we get it up on YouTube. But yeah, no, there's not a dulcimer in that piece. There is some piano. There is the piano, and there is some light acoustic guitar strumming. Right? Yeah. It's a Bilbo Baggins piece, right? And also I meant to do this as I was playing through these pieces and I forgot. See, look, I even have, so like that should have been displayed when we were listening to Cathedral of the Mothers. I went through all of the effort to grab all of these screen grabs so that we had something to look at, right? So that was the Journey Across the World. And so that takes us to the next piece of the soundtrack, which is the Maestro's Message. We did not know at the time that we were working on at this point whether or not every character in the game would have their own theme. And, you have to remember, we're balling on a budget, right? Like this was still an indie studio. We weren't Square Enix, right? And so we had limited time and resources. And so we had to think practically, right? Like if we write a piece of music, does it serve a purpose in the game? Do we have a spot where we can, yo, what's up, Chichiri? If we write a piece of music, do we have a spot for it? Can we use the piece of music multiple times, right? And so we knew that we wanted something for the lake scene, right? Where you're first introduced to Wilhelm, this place. And that Wilhelm was the key moment of this scene, right? This is where you meet Wilhelm. This is where you get the sword. This is where you first learn about your powers, right? And so the piece, again, since it involved magic, it needed to be in 3/4 time, right? Because that was the notion that I was setting up for myself. And so what this piece of music ended up being is sort of like Wilhelm at the lake. So you hear a statement of what becomes Wilhelm's theme that gets used in a couple other pieces throughout the game, which goes a little something like this. One second, let me close that down. Which becomes this. Wait. Let's try and play it one time through without screwing it up. Right, so that was essentially the foundation of Wilhelm's theme. Bottom, bum, bottom, bottom, ba-da-da-da-da-dum. Right, and so Wilhelm throughout the game, if I'm referencing Wilhelm in the game, it's solo violin. And that's a statement of his theme, and there's a couple other spots in the game where his theme comes up. There might be some mild spoilers throughout this stream as we talk more and more about these pieces and get into the later game stuff. But yeah, so what we had was Wilhelm's theme at the lake, right? Because we were like, this is not going to be like Wilhelm's core theme, but it needs to feature Wilhelm in some way, right? And so the thing that I did that's neat about this piece is that each section of the piece modulates up a minor third. And so you start with the piece in C minor, and then the next the next section starts in E flat minor, and then the section after that starts in F sharp minor, and then A minor, and then back to C. So it's a transition through a fully diminished chord, where each section modulates up a minor third, right? And in that way, the music is very circular, right? And very magical in nature, in that it can keep looping on itself over and over again, right? And so that was my premise for the lake theme. But again, at this point, we were really just trying to get some music out the door. And so this didn't really tie back to anything because it was one of the very first pieces that we wrote for the game. And so this is the Maestro's message. So yeah, that's the Maestro's message, the lake theme, right? I would love to hear it performed by an entire symphonic orchestra as well, Yavi. If you know anybody have them slide into my DMs. I am waiting for some wealthy billionaire to email me and say, hey, I want to fly you out somewhere so that my professional symphony orchestra can play your entire soundtrack. That would be amazing. So if you know someone, all right, let me know. You let me know. All right. And so, yeah, so that introduced solo violin, and that kind of pegged Wilhelm's instrument as the solo violin. And we find out that Wilhelm is from Tolera later in the game. When we hear the music from the Kingdom of Tolera, it also features a solo violin to tie into that. There is a theme later where we go to Wilhelm's house and it's ransacked. And when we go to his house and it's ransacked, we hear a different statement of Wilhelm's theme. And I actually think I'm going to just jump over to that one. We're going to kind of play them out of order here a second. I should have actually considered this ahead of time, you know, but I'm only so smart, guys. I'm only so smart. So let's bump forward a few tracks. A few slides. And so this is Wilhelm's house, right? And we see Wilhelm's house. It's one of the first missions that we go to when we get to Tolera at the end of the St. Clarity chapter. And it's been ransacked, right? So I wanted to give a version of Wilhelm's theme. I appreciate that, Gandalf. Gandalf the Wise, as always. So yeah, I wanted a restatement essentially of Wilhelm's theme here, but I wanted it to be like pensive and angry. Like, you know, you don't really see Wilhelm like lose his cool very often, right? He's very kind of reserved. And you know, he's a smart aleck, right? He's got cans and cans of sass, right? But he's not really like outward, you know, like Christopher is much more, you know, outwardly vocal and angry, right? Whereas Wilhelm was more reserved. And so I wanted this piece to kind of feel like Wilhelm's theme, but where like his anger at his house having been ransacked is just like bubbling right underneath the surface. And you also, at the very beginning of this piece, you hear a statement of the Time Empress theme, which we will come back to later. The Time Empress motif is this. Sorry. Just that little bit. I got to hear it in my head now. And you actually hear that. That is another theme. The Time Empress theme is another theme that you will hear littered throughout the soundtrack, which is also in E minor for reasons that we will get into. But that's the Time Empress theme, which is also in triplet time because, again, the Time Empress Waltz in 3/4 time, she is very magically inclined. And so her theme is in a triplet time signature, right? What was the process of learning the characters and areas? Did they just give you a summary or did you? No, at the point that I joined in, I saw character art. Carlos was basically at my disposal to answer any questions that I had, right? Obviously, the characters weren't as fully fleshed out as they were when the game released. But by the time I was writing this music, I knew that Wilhelm was a time mage. I knew that he was an old man in a young kid's body. I knew why he was trapped in a young kid's body, right? I knew all of those particulars. So like that did help influence the music, right? And so, yeah, so I knew we were going to Wilhelm's house in Tolera. And so this was a little bit later, right? This would have been after the demo, after the initial demo came out. And so we needed another version of Wilhelm's theme, but for his house that kind of had that pensive nature to it, right? Kind of had that rage boiling underneath the surface. And so I'm going to play the Maestro's theme here, just a little bit of it to get it back in your ear. And then we're going to listen to the Ransacked Residence. Okay. right? So there is the lake theme, and now here is the Ransacked Residence. Whoops. That's not the right piece. Play this one. And there was the little statement of the Time Empress theme, as if to allude to the fact that she's the one responsible, right? So you hear that little, again, another crystalline sound, right? Another chimey, percussive sound. And so we hear the tension bubbling underneath with kind of the reduced piano accompaniment and strings. And then you hear that little call from the Time Empress, right? And then this part right here. Right, exactly what Pooh Spaghetti said there just now, right? Like, it's kind of just bubbling under the surface. You have those pizzicato strings that kind of, like, here's a dirty secret about composers, right? There are some, you know, whether you're talking about a composer or a recording artist, anybody who makes music, a lot of people want to make it seem like they're very spiritual or in touch with the energies of the universe, and that they just like meditate and like the spirits call out to them and they grab that piece of music and they put it down. But really the thing is that like writing music is about understanding the nature of how your audience interprets the entire history of music, right? There are certain things that are in our musical vernacular that elicit a particular type of response, right? You hear those pizzicato strings, it sounds mysterious. It sounds like something is going on, right? It sounds like something foul is afoot, right? Because we've heard it dozens of thousands of times in the past, right? When, you know, we have John Williams to thank for the celesta sounding like magic, right? When you hear a celeste play, you think magic, right? Because you've heard that instrument in those scenarios countless times in the past, right? And so it becomes about drawing on those things that exist, you know? Sure. Yes, glorious. Whatever gets you there, right? And so something else that you'll notice in the piece is that there is a wood block in the background and it's tick-tocking. So you're hearing there is another subtle reference to the Time Empress, and you'll actually hear this in several other pieces throughout the soundtrack as well, where you hear a, and it's a little nod to the Time Empress, right? And her piece is 60 beats per minute, right? 60 seconds in a minute, right? So like there's a lot of kind of interplay with time in the soundtrack as well. You'll hear the woodblock in pieces. You'll hear pieces that were specifically written at 60 beats a minute, right? Right. Yes, exactly, Matt. And so, yeah. So, but then all of a sudden, right, to Pooh Spaghetti's point, when we get into that next section where there's the violin increases in intensity, it's like suddenly that anger has bubbled up, right? And it is like, and he's trying to push it down, but you hear those big accents on beat 2, ba-da-da, ba, ba-da-da, ba, right? And suddenly there's just like this surge of anger, right? While still being subdued, right? And so that's what I was going for here. It's a variation of Wilhelm's theme, but you can feel the anger boiling underneath at the fact that his home has just been torn apart. I keep muting myself so there's not bleed and then forgetting that I muted myself. So yeah. So that is the Ransacked Residence, right? Another variation on Wilhelm's theme. So we'll circle back here, right? And now, guys, are you ready for it? You're going to hear the first piece of music that was not in the game. This is a piece of music that I wrote for the game. We had intentions for the music, but it did not make it in the final cut. The idea that I had behind this piece was that I knew that there were going to be moments in the dialogue where like things were getting escalated, where like the conversation was getting heated and it was going to lead to a fight, right? And I was like, we need maybe some music in these moments where things are getting a little bit more heated, where we can transition from like the town music. Thank you so much, Pork Shorts. I appreciate it, buddy. Thank you. Where we can like transition from the town music to some like pre-battle music, right? Something where suddenly things have intensified a bit. It's not quite the battle theme, right? But it's something that elevates beyond just the town music in the background. Of course, that would require coding of putting that music in all of those dialogue spots throughout the game where that happened. Plus, we had to deal with things like load times into and out of battles, right? So we couldn't like smash the track right up against the battle theme, but it was kind of written with the intent that it could have bled right into the battle theme, right? It's written in the same key as the battle theme. And this piece right here, yes, exactly. Kind of like a music for battle transition. Yes, exactly. Where like we could have, at any point cut from this piece into the battle theme or had the battle theme interrupt it, right? But it didn't end up making it in the final game. This piece of music is very much a tip of the hat to the Chrono Trigger battle theme. If you listen to it, I think it has a lot. You'll notice some similarities to the Chrono Trigger battle theme. It's not as intense as the battle theme that everyone knows this game for. But it was, like I said, it was intended to be kind of like that precursor to battle, right? And so here is the anticipation of the fight. And so you can hear the similarities here in the to the Chrono Trigger battle music, in that it has this rhythmic pounding sort of undercurrent, right? In the Chrono Trigger, it was an electronic bass, right? You had the bass line, boom 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 boom, right? And so you had that like bass line that was just hammering it home, right? Like that 4-bar phrase just over and over and over again, right? And then you had these very long sustained chords that were kind of very slowly moving on top of that rhythmic groove, right? And that's what we have going on here, right? Same sort of premise. And it also introduces one of the rhythmic motifs that is pervasive through the battle themes, which is the bum 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 ba da da dum ba da dum, right? You hear that motif a lot as a tag ending to battle themes. Bum 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 ba da da, right? And so you hear it in the Timeless Battle, you hear it in the other battle themes. It comes in the boss battle themes, right? It's a little like refrain statement that kind of helps to tie the various battle themes together, right? And so I wrote that after I wrote the Timeless Battle and kind of reference to it, right? But I think, like I said, you can hear kind of the inspirations that I was going for with that. It's not quite as intense, but it definitely feels like the stakes have been amplified, right? And so that is the anticipation of the fight, which takes us into the Timeless Battle, which is crazy to think that this piece is as beloved as it's become. Lot of positive reviews talked about this battle theme and how much they loved it. This was probably only the second or third piece. No, it might have been the very first piece. I think I talked with Carlos, and once I knew that I had the job, I'm like, okay, what do you want me to start working on? He's like, battle music. We need battle music, right? So I think this might have been like the very first piece that I worked on for Cris Tales back in 2019. It's undergone some revisions. Everything about the piece is 100% programmed. There are no live instruments playing. I didn't play this guitar part, right? Everything that you're hearing here is programmed. There is not a single live player on the entire soundtrack. Everything is plugin libraries. And so, like I said, this battle theme, I wanted it to sound very upbeat and sprightly, right? Because this is the start of the adventure where we don't really know how high the stakes are, how crazy things are going to get. And so, it's, kind of upbeat, very, very groovy, right? Very cat jam. It starts out with a little Final Fantasy tip of the cap. It starts out with this run up of a fully diminished chord, right, into a little 2-bar fanfare. The opening part, the right, the intro of this was kind of intended to be like that battle transition that you hear in like other classic JRPGs, where like the moment that you meet that random enemy encounter across the screen transition, you have this fanfare, right? This interruption that brings you into the battle. But because the battle had to go through a loading screen, right? Because they were making the game on so many platforms, the music couldn't start until the battle scene was initiated. And so like that was kind of my intention with that opening flourish, was to kind of transition us into battle. It didn't end up quite working out that way. But it's still a nice way to start the piece off. And the subsequent battle themes start out with that same flourish, and then transition from there, right? To create some cohesion amongst the battle themes. Do they use temp music while you're doing the game dev before the composer comes on? I've heard of the process. OMG. They didn't like, when we very first started out on this project, what we did was we did talk about reference music, right? Because if somebody comes up to you and they're like, I want some medium tempo, hard rock, funky piece of music for this area of the game, right? Like, I could go and find like 50 pieces of music that meet that description, but only like one of those pieces is actually the thing that my client is asking for, right? And so I actually don't mind talking from temp music, right? Because I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time writing something that is not going to meet the client's vision, right? And if they already have like some other pieces in mind, if they already have a feel for what the kind of music that they're looking for, I don't want to go trying to force their hand into thinking differently, right? I want to write something that aligns kind of with the vision that they already have in their head. And so early on in the development process, when we had basically no music, we did talk reference a lot. Okay, you know, we're in this area of the game. What do you think of when you think of this area of the game? Whether that's music from another video game, from an anime, from a movie, from a TV show, right? Like, what do you hear when you see this part of the game, right? And so we worked from reference early on. The more we built out the soundtrack of the game, the more freedom and liberty I was given to just like take an idea and roll with it, right? Once we had kind of developed the musical language of the game, but there was the only places where there were temp music, there was temp music, were in cutscenes. I would frequently get a cutscene for the game, where they had already cut the video to some other existing piece of music. So then I would work to try and write something that already matched those cuts. And so the way the soundtrack is laid out is you get the bulk of the soundtrack that is all of the looped pieces throughout the game until we get down to about track 50. And then this is the game over music. This is the music from the inn when you spend the night at the inn. And then the rest of the soundtrack down here, these are all the cut scenes, right? And so like I would occasionally get some temp music in place for these cut scenes because they had already, you know, been working on the animation for that, right? But outside of the cutscenes, no, there wasn't really temp music or placeholder music. And so for the Timeless Battle, we have our main battle theme, which is this. Right? Ba-da-da-dum, bum, ba-da-da-da. And it starts out on E, and it's basically outlining an E minor 7 chord. So you get the E, but then you immediately get a G major chord underneath it, right? And so it's in a minor key, but 3 out of the first 4 notes spell out a G major chord, you know? And so that's why like it sounds upbeat. It's in a minor key, but it doesn't really sound minor. You know, it still kind of has like an upbeat, sprightly feel to it. And then what we did for the second and third battle themes, which we'll get to later, or maybe we'll just cut to them after this, is what I did was I took that same E minor chord and I just started it on the next note of that chord. So the first battle theme starts out on E. And then the next battle theme starts out on G above it, but still outlines that same E minor chord. And then the third battle theme, same sort of deal, but starting on the B. But then immediately introduces the A sharp, because the battle themes get more and more dissonant from 1 to 3. And by the third battle theme, we're starting out on a B natural, which is also the same note that the Time Empress Waltz starts out on. Right? And so as we're getting closer to the Time Empress, the battle themes are moving up that E minor chord closer to the start of the Time Empress theme, right? So that's how I kind of transitioned through the battle themes and got kind of more and more intense as those themes went on. I'm trying to think if there's anything else particular about the Timeless Battle that I want to address. I really love the B section of this piece. The guitar solo that you hear in it was 100% programmed. Spent many hours yelling at my computer and telling it to be a better guitar player. If I was to do, another game, if somebody else was to hire me to do something, I would demand that we bring in a guitar player to record these parts live so I don't have to program them. But here it is. You've probably heard it, a dozen or more times now. So let's take a listen to the Timeless Battle. And this, yo, what's up, Carl? How you doing, buddy? Welcome in. Carl Sagan, who you just saw in chat there a second ago, and everybody's saying hi to him because he's a big deal here on Twitch, if you don't know. Carl Sagan is the reason all of this happened. He doesn't know this, but I found out about Mario Maker, as I mentioned earlier in the chat, that I found out that you can make music levels in Mario Maker 2. Carl Sagan was the guy whose videos I saw on YouTube playing Mario Maker levels. And I'm like, who's this dingus playing Mario Maker? This looks like a lot of fun, right? So I started watching Carl's videos on YouTube. That got me over to Twitch, right? And so Carl was, that first bump of Twitch that I got for free, right? On YouTube. I saw Carl's videos. I don't know how the YouTube algorithm presented them to me, right? I came upon some Carl Sagan videos, got onto Twitch. Carl Sagan, not the Carl Sagan that Green Heroes just posted over here, though Carl Sagan 42 is a big fan of Carl Sagan, the Carl Sagan, which is why he's named that. Carl Sagan was friends with a guy named Graham Pooh Bear, who also did Mario Maker videos on YouTube, who is the same Graham Pooh Bear that Barbarous King made the ROM hack for Grand Poo World. And so all of this started, this whole trickle down started because I was like, I need to get Mario Maker for the Wii U so that I can make music levels in Mario Maker, because I could make better music levels than these other people in Mario Maker that are making music levels, because that's the kind of ego that this guy has, right? So yeah, say hi to Carl. Hi, buddy. Thanks for stopping by. And so I think this is also a good point to talk about the structure of the Timeless Battle and the other battle themes, whether it's regular enemy battles or boss battle themes. I basically wrote all of the themes in an ABC structure, where an ABC structure with an introduction, right? So we have the intro, fanfare, flourish, right? The A theme is sort of like the bad guys theme, right? The battle theme for the baddies, right? And then the B theme is the protagonists, our heroes, fighting back against that battle theme. And then the C theme ends up being the breather, right? Before we get back into battle, where we don't know yet who's going to win, right? So the C theme is kind of that breather moment, but also building tension again. So yeah, the battle themes are all structured in that way, right? Because when I was working on this soundtrack, I was thinking very programmatically, and this will actually lead into the forest music, which we'll get to here in a second. But when I was thinking about how to write a piece, I found myself thinking programmatically, right? And so when I was thinking about battle music, I was thinking the A theme is the bad guy theme, right? The B theme is the heroes battling against that theme, the more triumphant, heroic version, right? And then the C theme is the who won, who lost, what happens now, right? Before it loops back on top of itself, right? So a lot of my pieces for the soundtrack are kind of in an ABC setup, because that also harkens back to the 16-bit era, right? Where you had just, pieces that were 60 to 90 seconds long, where it was just A, B, C, loop, A, B, C, loop, A, B, C, loop, right? And so I structured a lot of my pieces that way as well, right? Whereas I could have done A, B, A, C, and taken the piece and made it a 3-minute piece by cutting back and forth sooner. I was kind of given boom, 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 right? Because I was following that 16-bit, that SNES era format for the tunes, right? Because I wanted to make sure that this piece could be distilled down into a 90-second Super Nintendo port, right? And so that is the Timeless Battle. And like I said, that setup persists through the other two battle themes, which we'll come upon here. And so that's the Timeless Battle. Like I said, very heavy on the electric guitar, because Chris Bell is starting out her journey in earnest. We don't know how bad it's going to get. So the guitar is very lively. It's very energetic, right? But then it soon gets beaten down, right? And the second battle theme is the Battle of Attrition, where it's a halftime tempo because we are worn out. We are fatigued from the battle of the game, right? And we'll get to that here in a second. We'll keep moving on here, and we'll kind of reference back to the Timeless Battle when we get to the next battle theme. But if it's going to play often, and particularly a lot of the time, you want to get as much of the song. Yeah, exactly, Poo Spaghetti. Who are some musicians and soundtracks that you look up to, inspired you from a video game standpoint? So growing up, I always wanted to score like movie soundtracks, because the idea of working with motifs, the idea of being able to write music to represent a person was always very very interesting to me, right? And so I've loved writing with motifs. So of course I love the music of John Williams. As far as video game composers go, I will butcher their names if I try to say them, but I grew up on the music of Koji Kondo, Yasunori Mitsuda. Chrono Trigger is probably one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. It is insane to me. It is insane to me that Yasunori Mitsuda wrote Chrono Trigger between the ages of 19 and 21, right? Like, there's not a single piece of music I wrote when I was 20 years old that I would want people to listen to this day, right? And the fact that he wrote that music at such a young age and people still hold that soundtrack up on a pedestal 30 years later, right? That is just insane to me. That is insane. That is insane. I love the Chrono Trigger soundtrack so much. I also grew up on the music of Mega Man, Super Metroid, Castlevania, right? Those were all big franchise influences for me. And so just that idea, the limitations that NES and SNES had, the limitations that NES and SNES had, where your tracks couldn't be that long and they couldn't contain that much material, but you had to make it work, right? And so, like, you couldn't get a job in the industry unless you could write a catchy melody, right? And so, like, that is where a lot of my inspiration came from, right? You got to hook them early, you got to write a catchy melody, and it's got to be good enough that somebody can hear it for 30 minutes straight without getting sick of it, right? And that idea that you could write a melody, you could write 90 seconds of music that is good enough to hear that many times over and over again and not get sick of it, right? Like that was the goal, right? Yes, I did name a track The Decisive Battle, but there are dozens. There are dozens of JRPG soundtracks that have a track called The Decisive Battle. It's all the tip of the cap, right? Plus, I can only make so many battle and time related puns, right? Like, I mean, you're lucky that it got a title at all, because I could just be like so many other soundtrack composers where it's just like Battle 1, Battle 2, Battle 3, right? I tried to come up with some names, okay? Like, give me a break. I'm not good at naming things. I'm good at writing music, okay? I had to come up with names for the soundtrack. I would have called them just track 1, track 2, track 3 if it was up to me, right? So yes, we have a decisive battle. Get over it. Yeah, being a music dev was quite different back then. How did you combat the hearing too much of the same thing while producing the track? You don't, Glorious Rainbow. Like, I don't know if you do or not. Like, that's when you find that you've hit that secret sauce, right? Like, if you, as the person writing the music and having heard it so many times, if you can still listen to it and find joy in listening to the music, right, then you know that you did good, right? The thing that I equate it to is, when you listen to a piece of music and it gives you like that feeling inside your guts, and it gives you like the goosebumps, and it makes the hair on your arm stand up, and like that the tune just hits you just right, and like your body has a physiological reaction, right? Like, you're not telling your body, give me the warm butterfly gibblies in my guts, right? You're not telling your body, give myself the goosebumps, make the hair stand up, right? That's when I know the piece works, right? Is when like my body elicits that natural response, right? Where like that involuntary response, right? Like, I didn't tell my body to do that, but I'm having that reaction, right? And like, that's when I know that like I've got it, right? I did the thing. But there were numerous times throughout this process where it's like, I don't want to ever hear a thing I wrote ever again. I am sick of hearing music written by me. I'm good. I'm done. Moving on, right? You just got to power through it, right? Art is never finished, only abandoned. And, you just sort of, you got to take some breaks. You got to let some breaks. You got to let your ears rest. But then, you just got to get back to it. And hopefully in the end, you come up with something that you're proud of, that you don't hate listening to, right? But sometimes you write something that you still kind of hate, but like your client likes it, or it works for what you need it. And like, you just accept the fact that like, you didn't do your best that time. You'll try better later, or you'll try better the next time. It is time for the moment of victory. Now, this is another piece where this fanfare, this opening fanfare, is Chris Bell's theme. So listen to just the fanfare part, just the first couple of measures, just the first two measures here. Oops. Right? It's Cris Bell's theme right there. And so that opening fanfare is Chris's theme. And we purposefully made it so that the length of that fanfare is approximately the length of time that it takes for this first screen to cycle through, where it gives you like the level up, right? If your character is leveling up, it tells you the items, it tells you your experience and marbles gained, right? So that opening fanfare that fits nice and square. And so like if somebody finishes the battle and they're just like mashing to get through, get past the battle, they will get exactly that much of the music, right? Your controller's using the FL Keys grand piano. Actually, no, this is contacts. This is a contact library. This is, what is it? It is, the New York Concert Grand from Contact is the sound that you're hearing right here. Oh, the mash, is that you? And then the little looped section that comes after it also features very heavily Cris Bell's theme. You'll hear it. You'll hear ba-dum, ba-da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum. It's a variation on Cris Bell's theme. But then the end of the victory fanfare ends with a flat 2 to 5 to 1 cadence. It ends with a right? Flat 2, F major. Whoops, I just stepped. There we go. Where did my pedal go? Oh, there it is. Flat 2. That flat 2, 5, 1. And that became a cadence that I used for the Time Empress frequently. And so I snuck that little Easter egg into the victory fanfare as well, because it's like telling you like, yes, you've won, but like the war is not over, right? There's still worse stuff coming. So if you listen at the very end of the loop for the fanfare, you'll hear the tick tock of the clock again, and you'll hear that flat 2, 5, 1 progression of the Time Empress cadence. That is just kind of like alluding to like, you know, the battle is not over yet, right? So with that in mind, let's listen to it one more time, or all the way through rather. So that that is that flat 2 to 5 to 1 progression. And so, like I said, you wouldn't really know it unless you were listening for it, but like it gets slightly unsettled right there, right? And that is my little allusion to the Time Empress still being out there, right? That you took on that battle, the battle is not done, right? So that was my moment of victory. That was my best attempt at a JRPG fanfare. I think it turned out pretty well, right? So yeah, that was the moment of victory. And then after that, we get an interesting piece. This is the campsite conversation. So very early on, I wrote the Forest Glade, right? That was one of the very first pieces I wrote once we got past the demo, once we were into St. Clarity, working on Clarity. We knew that there was a forest dungeon, right? And we didn't have much melodic material to draw from. at the time. And so the Forest Glade is pretty much a freestanding piece of music. It doesn't heavily reference really any other themes in the game. It kind of stands on its own. But this is an example of something that I wrote that is very programmatic. It's in 7/8 time, and I did that because I wanted it to feel slightly uneven because it's nature, right? And so I didn't want it to be like straight military time or anything, right? It should be a little like this motion, right? Whatever this motion is. Somebody can describe that later, right? But like it shouldn't be pristine, right? It should be a little uneven. And so I put it in 7/8 time. And the Forest Glade is a very programmatic piece in which I imagine like seeing a forest glade where as the music's starting, you're seeing like little butterflies or insects fly past the screen. And then all of a sudden you see birds, you see rabbits and squirrels like scurrying through the tall grass, right? And then as the music gets more intense, maybe there's a buck or a bear or something that you see, right? And that, yes, exactly, Turtle Singer. And so then like the climax of the piece almost feels like a battle between like two bucks where they're like clashing horns, right? Or clashing antlers. And so like it's this kind of cycle of nature, right? Between predator and prey, where it's kind of starting out innocent and then it slightly gets more intense, right? But it's that like intensity that comes from nature and survival, right? And it's still a dungeon, right? So I wanted to have some bit of foreboding to it, right? Because you're fighting enemies. There's wolves and goblins and all sorts of things. So we're gonna play the Forest Glade first, and then we're gonna step back a moment and we're gonna play the campsite conversation after that with context to this, right? Look at this. Every single one of these screen grabs, I just went into the game and I pressed screen print, and like every single moment is like a work of art. Like you can come in here and just take a screen cap at any moment of the game and it just looks gorgeous. So this is the Forest Glade. Like I said, probably only like the 7th or 8th piece that I wrote for the game shortly after the demo got released on Steam. Oh, one more comment that I want to make. The piece is in 7/8, but if you listen to these very first two voices that are playing, you have the piano that is playing in 7/8 time, but then you have a celesta that is playing in 7/4 time on top of it. And so if you listen to the celesta, you're going to hear bum, bum, bum. You're going to hear very even time because the celesta is playing 7 even clicks over the piano's 7/8 time, which is, half the length of that. And so that's a trick that I use in composing to make odd time not feel so odd. And so you might not have noticed that this is in an odd time signature because you have that anchor of the celesta, right? Yeah, even like the little item art owl puzzle, I'm right there with you. Yeah, it looks very pretty, very well done. And all from the mind of really like one dude. Like I can't say that definitively. I know there were other people that worked on the team, but like the art style came from Sebas. And like it's just gorgeous. So here is the Forest Glade. And like I said, when you think programmatically when you listen to it, like imagine as if the music is trying to tell you a story about what's going on in the Forest Glade when you happen upon it, right? Yeah, exactly, Glorious Rainbow. There's some overlap, right? Phrases extend over the bar line, so it's not just ba 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 da da ba 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 da da the whole time, right? But here's like, you know, we have an animal that scurried into the glade, right? And you'll also notice a lot of hocketing, right? The melody is trading voices between instruments. Little bird just flew by right there, right? Maybe, you know, scurrying of animals, and then big flock of birds just flying by. And so this is the moment, like, after all of the craziness, right? Where like suddenly all of the creatures scurry away, right? And then you were just left with like a little moment of silence there. I tried to treat the bassoon with respect, Glorious Rainbow. I know that bassoon players are often brought in for comic relief. There wasn't really a comedical bassoon bit there. There are some other pieces that vaguely hint at that, but I tried to give the bassoon something cool to do in the soundtrack. So yeah, so that is the Forest Glade. And then we have, right before you get to the forest dungeon, you have this campsite, right? It's the very first place that you meet. Eleanor, you can't sit in my lap right now. I'm sorry. You're going to have to find something else to do. Where right after you flee Nareem in the intro of the game, you end up at this campsite. And I thought this would be a nice moment to write a piece of music that... Eleanor, stop. You can sit up there or you can sit somewhere else. Yes, she is a bottomless pit of need. So the thing that I thought that was neat about this piece is it gave me an opportunity because, like I said earlier, is that, you know, not necessarily every character in the game has their own theme, right? Because we needed a place to use it if we were going to use it, right? And so we have this moment here with Crispell, Christopher, and Wilhelm where they're having a conversation, right? And so I thought, what if I wrote a piece of music where the background elements are the Forest Glade because they're in the forest, right? But that the melody instruments are a conversation between three instruments, right? Forest Glade is memorable. You started playing the OST a second time. Yeah. It's because the Forest Glade starts out with those same background elements, right? Because the conversation is happening in the forest, but it's nighttime, right? And so you'll hear Wilhelm enter as the solo violin, and then you'll hear Crispell respond to him with an oboe, and then Wilhelm will respond back, and then Crispell will respond again, and then Christopher comes in and he has something to say, right? And Christopher's, so we have Crispell's theme, right, and we have Wilhelm's theme of. And then what I did for Christopher was I gave him a reference to the St. Clarity theme, which is, wait, nope. Oh my goodness. Oops. Right. And so we'll hear that in Clarity here in a second because Christopher's from Clarity. And so whenever I'm trying to reference Christopher in the music, we get like a statement of St. Clarity's theme. And so you have this background element of the forest and this conversation between trumpet, Christopher, oboe, Crispell, and solo violin for Wilhelm. And then after they have their initial conversation, the B section of this piece moves to a reference to the Time Empress theme, because now all of the voices have joined and they're talking about the Time Empress and their mission. And so you'll hear the second half, a solo cello come in, and that's representing the Time Empress's theme. That is, where the discussion has transitioned to in the music, right? So this is the campsite conversation, and it's a cute little moment where I could play with some themes, and kind of get those motifs in the player's ear. One more thing to point out, right where I stopped it, you're going to hear some chimes play and some bells, or some chimes and some bells play. And the chimes and the bells are playing a reference to the town of Narim. So it's a little Narim's theme because they're already homesick, right? So the very first thing that you hear is actually a statement of Narim's theme, because Narim is behind them now, right? But of course, Chris Bell would at this time love nothing more than to go home, but she can't go home. And so I frequently use the town of Narim's theme as a stand-in motif for homesickness or longing, right? Wanting to be back where you're safe, right? So you'll hear the town of Narim, which is, again, Norihiko's theme. You'll hear that pop up a couple spots throughout the soundtrack, and it actually comes into play in the third battle theme in a way that I think is just like chef's kiss. I'm just a big fan of it, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So anyways, let me start it again from the top. And like I said, when you hear those chimes and the bells come in, that's a little statement of the Narim theme. So we got this background figure still in 7/8, right? And then we get the Narim statement. And then echoed in the chimes. And then Wilhelm tells Chris something. Chris Bell responds. Back to Wilhelm. And then in harmony with Christopher on top. And then right here, this is a statement of the Time Empress. And then Wilhelm talking about the Time Empress in the solo violin. So you get that. And so, yeah, you hear that low cello, right? It's in a different key. Oops. I forgot in the key that it's in. But yeah, that low cello there is a statement of the Time Empress theme. And so you hear it first in the low cello, which is like that ominous bit. And then you hear Wilhelm repeat it up an octave, right? In the solo violin, 2 octaves, as he's kind of talking about the Time Empress to the rest of the group, right? And so this was, again, a very little programmatic thing, some hocketing, some call and response between the various voices, right? And so, yeah, so we inserted this. This was written a little bit later in the development. Like, we came back and we inserted this, and I thought it was a nice moment to kind of establish some of those themes and tie it into the forest dungeon, right? And then we have another conversation piece later in the game, the Cathedral Conversation, which does the same thing, but it also introduces JKR's theme. And instead of having the background melody be, or the background harmonies be the Forest Glade, the background melodies are Paulina's theme, the Faithful Fashionista, because they're having that conversation inside of Paulina. And so if we were to come down here and listen to the Cathedral Conversation, you'll notice those similar elements, right? This underlying current here is based on Paulina's theme instead of the Forest Glade, but still in 7/8 to maintain that conversation theme that I set up the first time. Again, a statement of the Narim theme. Yo, Saint Mahoney, thank you so much. No, it is not cheesy. I appreciate it. There's nothing more satisfying than, you know, putting art out in the world, putting something that you're passionate about out into the world and getting a positive response from it. So not cheesy at all. Thank you so much, Saint Mahoney. I really appreciate it. And so you'll hear in the background there, the background element changes, and it plays a little repeating pattern that we hear in Rainbow Lake, and that is representing JKR, because that's where we meet JKR, is in Rainbow Lake. And so if you listen, the background melody changes, and that was me trying to include JKR into the conversation as well. That is the Rainbow Lake background motif. And so the background melody breaks from what it was doing to give us a little bit of that JKR theme. And so again, that kind of like, sister pieces there, right? As far as the vinyl goes, there's been no announcement on a vinyl. I can't provide any details one way or the other if they're going to do physical copies or not. Once the rest of the world knows, I will know. And, right now it's just available digitally. Hopefully, they'll do some sort of physical copy. But right now we just have the digital copy. Yes, there are several people in my Discord who would be very happy with a vinyl, even though many of them do not own a record player. So that was the campsite conversation. That was kind of a fun little piece to write and play around with some themes. And then we get to the Decisive Battle, which we hear right at the very beginning of the game with the Volcano Sisters. But we also hear for the first time we also, get our first real instance of it when we fight the wolves that we see there on the Forest Glade, right? But we hear it for the first time with the Volcano Sisters. This was probably the second piece of music that I wrote for the game, knowing that we needed boss music, right? Knowing that Carlos wanted that distorted guitar, right? And so I leaned on the thing that was the most obvious to lean on, which is the tritone, right? Right, that bum ba dum ba da da dum bum ba da 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 da, which is actually also in 7/4. So we have another piece in 7. If you can't tell, I love odd time. I would argue that all of my battle themes are really like a concerto for drum set, right? I'm a drummer. I'm a percussionist. I love rhythm. I love syncopation, right? Percussion features heavily in all of my music, and the drum set is like right there at the forefront of all of it, right? So like, I feel like an argument could be made to say that my battle themes are concerto for drum set, right? And so here is the Decisive Battle, because it's hard to come up with names for battle themes. Don't at me. And yeah, let's listen to the Decisive Battle. Yes, I love odd time. I love when you can write odd time and it doesn't feel like odd time, right? So let's listen to Decisive Battle. Might need to tune this one down here. This one's going to be loud. Notice that it also has that initial flourish at the start, that dun 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 dun. That's the same flourish as Crispell's theme, except it goes down and it's in a lower register. So again, it's mirroring that other intro that I created for the Timeless Battle, but in a much heavier, much more dark and brooding manner, right? We're going to listen to it a second time, right? But like, keep in mind now everything that I said previously about the battle themes, right? We have the A section, which is in 7/4, which is very much the bad guy theme, right? Ba-da-da, right? But then we have the B section, which is in 4/4 time, right? Yeah, I know. Like I said, you lean into that hard, right? That 4/4 section, that B section, is the heroes battling back, right? The tempo picks up. And you have all of those interjections in the B section where it sounds like clashing, right? Between the hero and the villain, right? And so like that B section is very much like the hero trying to overtake the villain, right? And then you have the C section where everything quiets down again. And you're like, did we beat him? Is the battle over? And then all of a sudden you hear the ba-da-da, come back, right? So yeah, you have that tritone melody after the cooldown part of the C, where you're like, is it over? Is the bad guy dead, right? And then that statement comes back to tell you, nope, we're going again, right? Because we're looping back, right? And so again, that same sort of structure to the storytelling of the music, right? Bad guy theme, hero theme, combating the bad guy theme. Is it over? Nope, we're looping back, right? Somebody asked, has the arrangement of pieces included in the demo changed since then? Yes. Almost every piece from the original demo has had some amount of spit polish put on it. I either added a section, I remixed it, I remastered it. The stuff that we're listening to now, with the exception of maybe one piece, I don't know. No, with the exception of the Town of Nareem theme, which was the piece that I didn't write, everything in the final product has been slightly tweaked or adjusted or cleaned up from the demo. So yes, there have been some changes. And so yeah, so let's listen back to the repeat here with that consideration, right? And then you hear the tritone there. Fight against it. Hero theme. And that final triumphant fanfare into the C section. And that little ba-da-da-dum-bum-bum is a variation on the default battle theme. And Wernetta, if you want to submit that to Rainbow Dragon Eyes when he's doing a drum stream, you let me know. I'll get you a copy of this track without the drums, and that way he can play over it. Okay, you just let me know. We call that synergy, right? Synergy. So yeah, I thought that worked. The problem was I had set the bar ludicrously high, right? And so now it's like I already have like a ripping boss battle theme, but we wanted more battle themes, right? So we ended up writing custom battle themes for each of the main world bosses. So there's a Tolera boss, or there's a St. Clarity boss battle, a Tolera boss battle, and a Cinder boss battle, plus the 2 final boss themes as well. And then everything else just gets this battle theme right for it. That's a mid boss or some other boss. And so yeah, so we get through the wolf attack, right? Where we hear the decisive battle, and that takes us to a much chiller place, right? Which is St. Clarity, right? And so Carlos told me that it was very important for this town that we needed to create a distinction between the Floodside District and the Walled City, right? That you had this very impoverished community that was, you know, not being treated well by by those in power, right? And so we needed a theme for the floodlight, or for the flood side, and then we also needed a theme for St. Clarity, right? And so yeah, so the Starblazer, I'll come back to your question and I'll kind of explain my thought process for the other boss battle themes. But so a lot of people in the reviews mentioned that it sounded like the soundtrack was inspired by Colombian music, and that's not really a true statement. I spoke with Carlos early on, and while the architecture and the look of the game is very much a fantasy world inspired by real world places in Colombia, he didn't want the soundtrack to feel like Colombian music, right? He wanted it to sound like JRPG music, right? He wanted it to sound like music that would fit in any other sort of JRPG, right? He didn't want to pigeonhole it. It'd be like, oh, what a nice Colombian JRPG soundtrack, right? He wanted it to have a wider scope than that, right? To cast a wider net. But this music for Saint Clarity is probably the closest I get to writing something that's kind of inspired by the music of that region, right? And so this piece, the Floodside District, I specifically wrote for a small ensemble because I wanted it to sound like something that like 5 or 6 people on a street corner could be playing, right? So the orchestration for it is very simple. It's 2 guitars, an accordion player, a pan flute player, somebody playing a very rudimentary drum set, and an acoustic bass, right? And I think that's it. And so you just got like 5 or 6 people playing this tune, right? And it's the theme of Clarity and of the Floodside District. And so you're going to hear in the guitars this. Right? So that's the Clarity, the Saint Clarity theme right there, right? And when you hear it in the Floodside, it's played at that speed. Bum, bum, or wait, get it in my ear. Yep, there we go. Bum bum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum 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 bum, right? Focusing on the fifth and the 1, the 5-1 movement. And then when we hear the walled city music a second later, yeah, you got the clave rhythm, right, as well. But when we hear it in the walled city later, you're going to hear that same motif, but it's going to be played in the cellos, and it's played at half time. It's going to be ba da 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 da, but you're gonna have a faster subdivision, right? Ba da da da, and it's basically the Clarity rhythm, but because it's in the walled city where there's prestige, where people live easier lives, the motif is half the speed, right? Because they're not working as hard. So that was my little nod to the disparity, right? Is that the motif is faster in the Floodside because people are working harder to get by, and it's halftime in the walled city and more regal, right? Because people lead a life of luxury, right? And so then you also have this B theme where the pan flute comes in, and it sounds kind of like a songbird, like that wish for a better life, and you'll hear the melody climb and climb only to fall, and then it climbs again, and then it falls, right? And so it's, again, very kind of programmatic of the life of these people where, you know, they're working hard, but they're not really getting anywhere. Reduced ensemble, right? Very kind of chill, but it also has that kind of like coastal town vibe that you associate with JRPGs as well, right? And so this is the Floodside District. Yeah, it's in F sharp minor, Glorious Rainbow. And the guitarist, I think this plugin that I'm using, I actually, the plugin allows you to capo the guitar. So I think I did write it in E, but I capoed on the 2nd fret. This is also one of the only pieces in the game to feature the acoustic bass, the electric bass like that. But yeah, you'll hear now. Do I think there will be a physical version of the OST? I'm hoping there will be here's all I can tell you. To everybody that's asking about the OST, will there be a CD? Will there be a vinyl? I cannot divulge any information. Things will happen when they happen. All I can do is tell you that the soundtrack is being released digitally through a company called Black Screen Records. You can look up their website, Black Screen Records, and you will see that Black Screen Records, in addition to doing digital releases, they also create CDs and vinyls. So the company that is releasing the soundtrack digitally is also in the CD and vinyl business. So the hope is that we will also get a CD and or vinyl release, but that has not been announced. I don't know if or when they're going to do that. I just know there might be a possibility of it. Perhaps if the game does well enough. Like I said, I wish I could give you more information right now. Right now, it's only available digitally. As soon as I know something for certain, you all will know. As soon as it's been announced, I will be shouting it from the rooftops. But right now, that's all I know. It's released digitally, but it's being released by a company that does do CD and vinyl releases. So maybe they'll decide to release it on there. But you know, so if we listen to the Walled City, you'll hear a lot of the same themes, right? That pan flute theme, we hear it in the Walled City. That initial theme in the acoustic guitars, you're going to hear that in the cellos, right? It has a little bit more pomp and circumstance to it. It's written, for a full orchestra, but you're going to notice a lot of those same themes, right? Because there's still one city, right? It's still St. Clarity. It's just this economic disparity between the wealthy and the impoverished, right? So here is the walled city of St. Clarity that is very much living in its opulence, but still has its thematic roots in the Floodside District. And here's that first melody from the guitars there. But at halftime. Something else that's a little cheeky about this theme is that you'll notice that once we move into like the full 2D section, is that the bass line in the larger sections is actually relatively simple. There's not a lot of movement in the low end, and that was kind of me winking at like that there's not a lot of depth to these people, that it's very surface level, right? So you have a lot going on in the mid and the high section with like the trumpet bits and everything, but the stuff going on underneath is sort of very basic and simple, right? So that was another little like cheeky little commentary in the music, is that there's not a lot of substance underneath, right? We were listening to the Walled City. So let's finish that listen, and then we'll continue on, right? So let's do one final listen of the Walled City here, the second playthrough, and then we'll move on to another track. I'm gonna take a breather here. because I've been talking. Let's listen to some music. Dark Art, I'm going to try and be as spoiler free as possible. If we make it to the tail end of the soundtrack, then there are possibilities for minor spoilers, but I'm going to try my best to be as spoiler free about it. Have a good one, Starblazer. If I'm about to say anything that's super spoilery, I'll let you know, okay? I tried to make sure all the screen grabs and everything weren't spoiler filled. Okay, so there you go. That's the walled city of St. Clarity, right? And so when you're in St. Clarity, I probably won't play it on stream just because it's a 30-hour game, and I feel like I don't stream enough to get it in. Like, I would be streaming, you know, it'd take me like, what, 6 5-hour streams to get through. And we wouldn't be able to talk about the music at this pace. And so I probably won't end up playing it on stream just because I'm not a streamer. I happen to stream, but I'm not a streamer. And I don't know. I don't know what I would like to get into more music making on stream and less video gaming on stream. But right now I'm trying to take it one day at a time. Okay. So that's the walled city of St. Clarity. Now there's a sewer. There's a sewer in the game because Carlos will tell you that a game is not a true JRPG if there's not a sewer segment in the game, right? So naturally, you got to go down in the sewers. Now, this was another piece that I wrote fairly early on in the game. Carlos had some specific asks. He wanted like the big reverberating drum sounds. He wanted it to sound like the percussion section was like banging on the pipes in the sewers, right? He referenced, I think, a Crash Bandicoot game that had kind of a very sewer sound to it, right? And so in the sewer part of the game, Dark Art, if you've not gotten to the sewers yet, this might be a mild spoiler. I don't know. But in the sewer part of the game, it looks like there's somebody like drifting through the sewers, and you're like going through the sewers trying to see if there's somebody that you need to save. But that person drifting through the sewers is a monster, and it's the boss battle of the sewers, right? And so we have a sewer theme here where the melody is sustained almost entirely by a solo cello, which is kind of like this siren call in the sewer where, you know, you hear all these sewer sounds and these background rhythms and everything, and there's this cello line that's kind of cutting through all of that, and you'll hear an occasional interruption of brass, and that occasional interruption of brass is playing some variation on the St. Clarity theme to still try and tie this section to Clarity. But yeah, that's kind of the thought process behind this, is we wanted a very reverby, atmospheric sewer piece, and then we have this cello line that is kind of calling you through the piece. So here is the sewer shortcut. And this was another thing about the game that was great, was that it really gave me an opportunity to flex. I could write pieces like this. I could write pieces like the Floodside District. In Cinder later, there's like jazzier pieces. In Talira, there's more like Baroque, classical style pieces. And so it really let me do a lot of different things, right? It wasn't just 70 of the same piece, right? And so, yeah, here is the sewer shortcut. There's not a direct fugue, Glorious Rainbow, no. Sorry. I actually didn't Glorious Rainbow, but that's a brilliant idea. Yo, what's up, Laser Belch? How you doing, buddy? Oops. I'm not ready for you yet. I'm not you, Laser. Glorious Rainbow, when I first started using this sound library, it did not have mute sounds for the brass. There were no mutes whatsoever. And then I would say when I was like 70% of the way done with the OST, they released an update for the library. I used the BBC Symphony Orchestra by Spitfire Audio is what, like 99% is like 99% of this library. No, I know. I was surprised, but there are plenty of mute sounds now. They just didn't come with the initial release. And so there are some pieces later in the soundtrack that do use the muted brass because I had access to them. But yeah, the muted brass would have been nice for those parts. While I was looking at the Bandcamp for the OST, you saw my face in the corner and clicked it, thinking it'd take me to your profile. And all it did was make your face gigantic on your screen. Hey, you know, it's not the worst looking face. By the way, Laser Belch, you're sub now. I'm sorry. You're going to see my face amongst your emotes. So like you're going to be scrolling through and you're going to see like Pokimane emote, and then suddenly my face, right? And so I'm sorry for that. All right. I'm sorry for that. But anywho. That was not my doing. That was the random draw of the gift sub bomb. So, welcome in, buddy. We're listening through the soundtrack. We're talking about themes. We're talking about memes, right? And so, yeah. So that's the sewer shortcut. And then we have another piece of music here that did not make it in the game. I do not believe. I wrote a theme for Audrey, who is the mechanic that you meet in Saint Clarity. She plays a key role in the story of Saint Clarity. And I wrote just a really simple, like 30-40 second piece for her. Because I thought there were a couple of spots where we can maybe use it. It didn't end up in the game. It's on the soundtrack. The thing that's interesting about her theme is that it's the opposite of Enzo's theme. So the boss for this area, Enzo, has his own theme, and it's like this. That's the Enzo theme. And so Audrey's theme is that exact same those exact same intervals, but going up instead of going down. And it's just a very sprightly little melody with some clanging sounds in the background because she's, you know, an engineer, right? So this is the Innovative Engineer. It's another piece that didn't quite make it into the game, but it's a cute little piece. It feels very like Koji Kondo to me, right? And so, yeah, this is the Innovative Engineer. Whoops, let me start from the top here. And so that piece is actually just a vamp between two major chords that are a major third apart. So I think it's going from like D major to F sharp major. It's something like that. I remember I like, it was kind of a jarring vamp at first, but I was like, I bet I can make this work. Like if I can shoehorn in the melody here, then I can make this vamp work. And so I had kind of purposefully picked two chords that did not immediately go back to back with each other and then see if I could make that idea work, right? So it's just a little 2-chord vamp. And like I said, whereas Enzo's theme goes down, hers goes up. And so it's a variation on Enzo's theme because she works for Enzo, but she doesn't have Enzo's evil intentions, right? And so I wanted it to be a play on that. Again, another cheeky little Easter egg if somebody paid close enough attention to notice that it's a little variation on Enzo's theme, right? And so this takes us to the Corrupt Cathedral, which when we arrive in Clarity, the heroes are going to the cathedral, right? Because they need to take Cris Bell to the cathedral, but they get to the cathedral and it's a fake cathedral, right? It's been corrupted by Enzo. It no longer stands for what it stood for originally. And so I wanted to make sure we had a piece of music here that told the player that that was the case, right? So that before any dialogue is spoken, you step in and you're like, wait a minute, why doesn't this sound like the last cathedral music that I heard, right? Why does this sound like a Scooby-Doo mystery, right? And so again, if you listen to this piece, you're gonna hear the cathedral theme, but it's gonna be over a much spookier, kind of accompaniment, right? And so there's no harpsichord in this. Sorry, not in this piece. This is the Corrupt Cathedral. The tremolo strings, the pizzicatos. And then you're going to hear the English horn come and play a bastardized version of the... I don't think there's any organ in the whole soundtrack, Rainbow. You're just going to have to move past that. So you heard how in that A section, right? You still heard that ba da 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 ba da, but you know, much kind of creepier and more menacing. But again, it's still the cathedral theme, right? But twisted. And then what's interesting about this next section is that you're going to hear in the celeste, you're going to hear this repeating pattern in the celeste that goes this. Except whatever key this piece is written in. I forgot what key this piece is written in. So if that's, so maybe it's, so that would be the 6th. So that is Enzo's theme in the cathedral, right? So this is, again, me kind of foreshadowing to the player that Enzo is the one that's responsible for all of this, right? And you hear it in that high repeating figure in the B section here. We got some low bassoon and some low bass clarinet. The cathedral theme, but with a couple inharmonic notes, a couple dissonant notes. I keep forgetting to change the image. That was Audrey. This is the cathedral. So yeah, that is the Corrupt Cathedral. Did you leave in that Easter egg in that one song? Which Easter egg? I've already forgotten. So yeah, like I said, just a variation of the cathedral theme. Like I said, there's several variations. Yes, Sephiroth is still in there. We'll get to that. It's less overt, but yeah, it's still there. Please no Sue. So like I said, that's Corrupt Cathedral. Yet another use of the cathedral theme, right? But a little bit more menacing, right? A little bit more unsure. Now, these next two pieces, I'm actually really happy with how these pieces turned out. These are the two shop themes. There is one shopkeeper that you meet in towns, and that's the Wild Cat Armory. And there is another shopkeeper that is out exploring in the world, like in the dungeons, right? So we have two shopkeepers for the game. And I wrote two themes, one for each of them, but they are the exact same piece of music. They are just orchestrated differently. So listen to and I purposefully put these on the OST back to back so that you can hear the similarities between them, right? So here's the Wild Cat Armory. This very much feels like a Koji Kondo Zelda Ocarina of Time shop theme to me, right? Like imagine you're going in to a shop in Ocarina of Time to buy another wooden shield because yours burnt, right? That is very much this vibe for me. Okay, and now listen to this theme, and you'll notice it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. Listen to this and be amazed at my orchestration powers. Yeah, I think this one might have Kodo in it, Renetta. But yeah, there's a little bit of a harmonic shift. Yeah, and there's that little clarinet line at the end. I'm afraid to ask Glorious Rainbow because you're going to find out that you know way more about audio engineering than I do, but I don't know what you're talking about. Nobody touched this music beyond me. I would have desperately loved to have had like some other audio engineer or somebody else to bounce ideas off of, or a mastering engineer or something, but like it was just me. And so my limited understanding of music mixing and mastering is all that went into this. A little bit of prayer and a little bit of armpit sweat probably. But yeah, they're both the exact same, both the exact same idea, the exact same premise, but two completely different feels, right? I think actually that might be a Santor. It's like a hammered dulcimer. Which, I mean, that's kind of like what a Kodo is, but a Kodo's bigger. Yeah, so those are our two shop themes. Oh, what did I? Yeah, I tweaked with the harmonies a little bit to give this one more of that to give this one you know, a little bit more of that nomadic Egyptian kind of flair to it, you know. I did work on this track on stream, yep, at one point I sure did. And so that gets us to the Red Rivers of Mount Thysia. Now, this piece, I might have overdone it on the programmatics of it. This piece is an 11/8, and it's a mountain dungeon. And so I wanted it to have like quiet parts and then grand parts, and then quiet parts and then grand parts, right? Because like it's, you know, you got the rivers, but then you also have the mountains, right? But then I also wanted the piece to be informed by what Enzo was doing in that area by harvesting the red crystal, right? The bad stuff that Enzo was doing. And so for the B section of the piece, you actually, it goes from being an 11/8 time to being in a more strict 6/8 time. And it has a much more military feel to it. And you'll hear Glorious Rainbow, if I say Dies Irae, do you know what I'm talking about? You'll hear several instances of the Dies Irae here, which if you've ever watched anything by Tim Burton or anything orchestrated by Danny Elfman, you've heard making Christmas, la la la, right? So that's the Dies Irae. It's a reference to a mass But yeah, The Shining, it's all over the place, right? The Dies Irae makes several appearances in this soundtrack, one of them being in this piece. So you hear sort of, yeah, it's all of Sweeney Todd as well. Yes. So you hear the A section of the piece, which is kind of speaking to the beauty of the area, but then the B section of the piece is speaking to the way that it's being ravaged by Enzo. And so you'll hear the Dies Irae, you'll hear Enzo's theme come in, right, to say that he's the one responsible for it. And then you'll hear at the very end of the section, you'll hear a choked crash cymbal. And that to me is emulating the animal getting slaughtered. And then you hear these wind chimes after the crash, which is like the blood of that animal spilling out into the river. And so that's what loops the piece. And so at the end of the piece, when there's the throat slit and then the trickle out, that loops back to the little opening odd time motif. And so it sounds like the blood is feeding the river, right? And so this is perhaps a little bit too programmatic, right? I maybe laid things on a little heavy-handed here, but there's a lot of clever stuff going on with this. And like I said, the initial the tune, when you hear it the first time, the background melody or the background sort of figure sounds like one thing, but then when you hear it in the context of the B section, I think it sounds like something else and something a little bit more troubling and more disheartening, right? This is the Red Rivers of Mount Thysia. There's Enzo's theme. Dies Irae. Dies Irae. So here's where Enzo's taken over, right? The high flittery winds that come in Enzo's theme. Statement of Enzo's theme. So yeah, there are a couple of metric modulations. Glorious Rainbow, if you like that one, you're gonna really like one that's coming up here in a bit. So yeah, that was my little program music for the mountain, right? The 11/8 part feels like very Chrono Cross to me, and then you get into like the purity, the sort of randomness, right? The 11/8 of nature, the unevenness of nature suddenly gets regimented, right, into straight military time. And so, you know, it's the music is explaining the story of what happened here, right? And that's how I approached a lot of these pieces, was to go like, can the music tell the story of this area without you being told anything else about the area but the music, right? And so, yeah, that is the Red Rivers of Mount Thysia. And then that takes us to my version. This is a theme that I wrote for Enzo. It ended up getting used in a couple other spots throughout the game. But there were some times where Enzo, what do you think would have done less programmatically? I don't know. Like, that's kind of how I approach. That's like my process flow. Like when I'm trying to brain through, like those are the things that I lean into: programmatic music, hocketing, voices carrying back and forth, between different instruments, the rhythmic syncopations, like those are just like my bread and butter tools. So I wrote a piece for Enzo that's not boss music. There were a couple of times where Enzo was talking, and we needed like some tense music. This was a piece that we wrote early when the layout of how you played through St. Clarity was very different than it is at the end game. And so we thought we needed this piece of music that precipitated the Enzo battle, but it ended up getting used in a couple other places as the St. Clarity chapter of the game expanded. There's definitely some Imperial March vibes here. You're going to hear Enzo's theme a lot here again, right? Right, we're going to get a lot of that. So this is the Mayor's Resolve theme for Enzo. Yeah, that little chromatic walk down, I like that. So you're still going to hear this. You're going to hear that bum, bum, ba-dum. You're going to hear that, right? That's how Enzo's, this A section starts out with a perverted statement of the Clarity theme. And then the end of the B section has subtly in the lower winds a response back, that ba da 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 da, and like, so the Clarity, the voice of Saint Clarity is still like very quietly objecting to what Enzo is saying here, right? The Clarity perversion right there. And then here's the Star Wars bit. Here's the thing. John Williams does not own high triplet figures in the piccolo and flutes, okay? He doesn't own that. Other people can use it too. Yes, I would agree. It also has a Final Fantasy Tactics vibe to it. Other people in the Discord have said as much as well. So yeah, that was a piece, like I said, that we wrote for a dialogue scene that was needed, but we ended up using it a couple spots throughout the game. I like how that one turned out. I think that one turned out really well. And that takes us to the General's Last Stand. So what I did for these boss themes for Clarity, Tolera, and Cinder is that each piece starts out with an intro that is a statement of the boss theme pitted against a statement of the town theme. And so that's what you're going to hear in the intro before the drums come in. You're going to hear the statement of Enzo's theme, and then responded to with St. Clarity's theme. And then we get into the boss battle, and then we have that same kind of structure, right? Where we have the boss theme, the hero's response to the boss theme, the oh shit, did we kill him? Is everything cool now? Nope, he's coming back. We're not done yet, right? That same sort of ABC premise. This piece is in 5/4 because you think about pieces like Mars by Gustav Holst, The Bringer of War. People associate 5/4 with military war, but also 5/4 is a perversion of a triplet time signature because we have the 3+2, and Enzo is trying to use magic. He's trying to use crystals for his own gain. So he's perverting the natural magic, the natural laws, to try and align them to his strict methodology, his strict 4/4 methodology. And so we have a piece here that's in 5/4 that is sort of a representation of that, right? So it works for that thematic reason. It works because of Mars. And like I said, you're going to hear the Clarity theme of this pitted against Enzo's theme of, and it's pervasive throughout this piece. This is the General's Last Stand. I also think that my titles for all of the 3 town bosses were all pretty clever. The General's Last Stand. So yeah, here we go. So there's Enzo, Clarity. Did. So before we get back into it, you'll hear that electric guitar line that comes in is crying out Clarity's theme, right? And then you hear the horns reiterate it, ba-da, 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 da, da, we're going to listen to it one more time, or listen through it the second time here. I really like this part. So there you go. Yeah, you can hear, right, the conflict between Clarity's theme and Enzo's theme, right? And that's kind of how I structured. So that's how I kind of bookended each town of the game. Was each town of the game ended with a boss fight where it was the hero's theme or the town theme pitted against the villain of that town's theme, right? And so we kind of do that setup, right? Intro of the themes and then pit it against each other. Yeah, that one's a fast one. Yeah, yep. So yeah, that was, and then that takes us to the Time Empress Waltz. After we fight Enzo, there's a cutscene. The cutscene is included in the soundtrack. I just put all cutscenes at the bottom of the soundtrack. So again, the Time Empress, Carlos, the team, they said that they wanted a waltz for the Time Empress, which worked perfect for me and my whole idea of magic and 3/4 time, right? And so this was my little like Kefka-esque. Yo, have a good one. Thanks again, Samaric. Goodbye ×2. This is my little Kefka-esque attempt, right? Again, use of piano, use of some choir here. I wanted this to kind of sound like something that should sound more playful and less foreboding, but there's just enough use of dissonance that makes you feel ill at ease, right? It's sort of like a cat that's toying with a mouse before eating it, where like you can tell that the Time Empress is smiling this whole time, but she could kill you dead in a second if she wanted to, right? And so this is the Time Empress Waltz, which is repurposed for the Time Empress Battle later in the game. So you hear this piece, and then you're going to hear elements of that in the Time Empress's battle theme, which comes along later in the soundtrack. And so this is the Time Empress Waltz. The Time Empress Waltz. I can talk. This piece is at 60 beats a minute, right? And you hear the tick tock of the clock, right? So it was purposefully set at 60 BPM. A lot of dissonant voice leaps. So yeah, that is the theme for our main bad, right? The Time Empress that we see here, that visits us after the Enzo battle. And so, like I said, her, that's where you hear the main statement of her theme, right? A lot of use of that that 6/5 motion between the C and the B, that half step motion. Anyways, oh yeah, nice, Cris. That's cool. I really like the Seafaring Stiletto. We will get to that one here in a second. That was a fun derivation. So, like I said earlier, we heard the Corrupt Cathedral, right? That was, the first variation on the cathedral theme. Well, we come across Paulina, this giant statue, right? And she is the actual Cathedral of St. Clarity. She houses the stained glass, right? She is who we are after. And so we need another cathedral theme here. And so what I did was I took the cathedral theme and I put it in E Lydian instead. It's actually funkier than that. And so we're still getting that same initial motif of the cathedral, but with an E in the bass instead of the G sharp. And so we have something that sounds like a much more whimsical version of the cathedral theme. The opening statement is like a 9-bar phrase. It's slightly off kilter because she's a little kooky. It's called the Faithful Fashionista because Carlos told me that, she was very high fashion. She was very fabulous, right? And that she needed a theme that reflected that fabulousness. And so, Paulina is also the one, she shops at TJ Maxx. Yes, exactly. She's also the one that transitions you out of Clarity and into Tolera. And so I also used her piece as a way to kind of put a coda, a bookend on the Clarity chapter. So after the A section where we get Paulina's theme, which is again a variation of the cathedral theme, the B section becomes kind of a reinterpretation of some of the St. Clarity themes as you're taken away from St. Clarity and on to your next adventure. And so you'll hear some trumpet in the B side of this piece that is referencing the Clarity themes. And you'll hear also some high Celeste parts, some high bells that are also playing fragments of the cathedral theme over that B section. And so this is the Faithful Fashionista. It's like this is the part where she's carrying you across the ocean, right? A little bit of acoustic guitar in there, a little bit of marimba. And so, yeah, I made sure that each cathedral in this game had a song, had a track for it, right? Because like they're some of the main story points in the game. And so, yeah, that's the music that plays when you're inside Paulina. And like I said, you can hear how it's that ba-da-dum-bum, ba-da-da-da-dum. That's still the cathedral theme. It's just a little broken up. And then it kind of derivates at the tail end, but it's still effectively the cathedral theme. It's just starting out on that E in the bass to give that major tonality. Right? And so, yeah, that was really fun. Like I said, I love working in themes, right? Work smarter, not harder. And I had already created a theme that represented magic, that represented the cathedral. How could I apply that theme to Paulina and make it different, right? Are any of you boomers out there that remember that episode of The Simpsons where Marge gets invited to the fancy country club, but she can't be seen wearing the same dress twice. And so she keeps renovating, or, she keeps like redoing her dress, right? She keeps making the same dress over and over again. That's what I'm doing here, right? Is I have one piece of material and I'm seeing how many different ways can I rework it so that to you, the listener, it sounds like a brand new piece of music, but, to me, I know that its foundations are the same as that other piece of music, right? I didn't really write new material. I just repurposed it, right? So yeah. You know what I do in my off-stream time is my own business, Glorious Rainbow, okay? So yeah, but that's exactly the point, right, Matt? Is that you take a soundtrack like I don't know if anybody remembers Yoshi's Woolly World, not that one, but the other one that just came out for Switch. It got some complaints about the soundtrack because every level is a variation on Yoshi's theme. Like every level, Yoshi's Crafted World, yes, it's Yoshi's theme integrated into that level's music. And if you're paying attention, suddenly you're hearing the same theme over and over again every level. And so there's definitely a way to overdo it where the average listener picks up on it. But if you're sly about it, right, it instead becomes like an Easter egg for the musically inclined. Like for those people that are only going to listen to the music at face value, it's an enjoyable experience. But for the people that are willing to dig in and see how the piece works, there's stuff for them too, right? And so, yeah, this is how you write a lot of music in a very short amount of time, right? Because I think what's important to note here, guys, I'm not a full-time composer. I just got done working a 9-to-5 job, a day job. I work 40 hours a week, day job that has to do with PC, or that has to do with system troubleshooting. It has nothing to do with music writing. This entire soundtrack was written in my evening and weekend time while I continued working a full 40-hour work week and while I still streamed on Twitch and everything. And so what's up, Barb? Thank you for the bits. Thank you for the Troner bits. Thank you for the raid, Barb. I really appreciate it. We are just doing a Q&A, a behind the scenes. We're talking about the soundtrack. Guys, the soundtrack is available now. You can listen to it right now. You can go to Bandcamp. You can pay $10. You can download the entire soundtrack, or you can go to Spotify. You can go to YouTube Music. You can go to Amazon Music. You can go to Tidal. If for some reason y'all still have a Tidal account, it's available everywhere. You can go listen to it. You can buy it if you want. You can stream it if you want. It's available on all the things. Somebody in chat asked for the battle theme. Which battle theme do you want? There's a bunch of them. All right, this is the main battle theme. This is the main battle theme to the game. This might indeed be the battle theme that they said is one of the best battle themes that they can think of from recent years. Maybe it was this one. I don't know. There's a couple of them, but I think it's this one. Talking on mute, son of a bitch, killing the momentum. Maybe they were talking about this battle theme. Maybe it was this one. But maybe they weren't talking about that battle theme. Maybe they were talking about this battle theme. I got a little Dream Theater in me. I got a little Mike Portnoy. But wait, maybe they weren't talking about that battle theme. Maybe they weren't talking about that one. We're getting a little off track here. It's me, Alex. I have a P.O. box now. I want my wood burning. It's been a minute. How you doing? We need to connect. I want my art. It's me, Alex. What's up? All right. Maybe they weren't talking about that battle theme because we have a couple more battle themes. Now, this one is a little baroque, right? This one takes it back a second, but we got another battle theme. This is another boss battle theme, right? Here we go. For anybody out there that gets down on some J.S. Bach, here's a battle theme for you. Maybe they were talking about this one. Got some extra please with this one. A little bit of extra please here. This is where somebody would bring out the cape. You know, bring out the cape. It's too much. I'm done.
Composite 1, Composite 2.
Yo, KLM, thank you so much, buddy. Or wait, no, they probably weren't talking about that battle theme. Maybe they were talking about this one. I skipped one. What about the Battle of Attrition? Maybe, let's take it down. Let's take it down to halftime here. Let's take it down to halftime. We're getting a little too worked up. We're getting too worked up. Oops, all battle themes. Oops. Oh yeah, I knew it was happening. I knew it was happening when I wrote these. Oh no, we got way more than 2/4 time. We got all the time signatures. But no, I'm sorry. I'm wrong again. I don't think they were talking about that one, guys. I really thought maybe that was the one that they were talking about. Maybe they were talking about this one. I'm not sure. You ready for it? I grew up on some Dream Theater. It's too much, guys. It's too much. We're out of battle themes. Wait. There's more battle themes? There's more battle themes? What about this one? Do we have any Sephiroth fans? Nobuo Uematsu, please no sue. This is the right one. We're good. We're good. There might be more battle themes. I found a couple more. Cut it! Cut it! They probably were not talking about that one. I have 2 more battle themes for you. They were probably talking about one of these. Maybe it was one of these. Maybe it was this one. Yes, these are all samples, not a single live player in this whole OST. All sample libraries. Okay, guys, it's too much. It's too much at this point. It's like a concerto for drum set. It's ridiculous. Oh my goodness. Okay, we don't have the energy in us for one more, for the final boss fight, right? You probably don't want to be spoiled with the final boss fight, and you probably certainly don't want to enter into a raffle for a free soundtrack. I think we're going to listen to this. We'll give out a raffle. We'll give out some soundtracks. Why the fart not? Here we go, guys. We got the last one. It's not nearly as good as the rest of them, but I hope you enjoy it. The final battle. Here we go. Yo, thank you for that sub. Woo! Woo! Yes, I love those in this piece, Glorious Rainbow. It made me so happy when I did that. Charisse, I need you to close this so that we can award a winner so that we can draw again. There's too many people. Yeah, you know what? Can we do that? Can we draw multiple winners with Moobot? Will that let us do it? Can we pick one? Can we pick more than one? Can we give out some more? Guys, that is the battle music for Cris Tales. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a fun time. Let's chill out. Let's chill out for a second. We gotta cool down. We gotta cool down. I have some okay, here we go. Let's just chill out for a second. Let's cool off. Let's have some water. Here we go. Yo, X, thank you for gifting a sub to Dairy Dude. Guys, keep entering. I need to go refill some water. We'll draw another name. Hell, maybe we'll draw a couple more. I got dozens of dollars in the bank. Let's give out some more soundtracks. Give me just a second. I'll be right back. Let me draw. Oh my goodness, Composer, thank you for those 10 gift subs. Thank you so much, Composer. I hear you make great music. Thank you. Composer, wherever you are out there, you're probably lurking. Oh, I have one more kind of upbeat ditty here. It's not quite as intense as everything else. Let's listen to this one. This one's pretty, but it's also lacking in some chill. Let's listen to this one. I like this one. How about this one? There we go. We got way off the rails on a crazy train, guys. This is music from Crystallis, what we're looking at right now on screen. I'm not muted. I'm not muted, you're muted. Don't look, Dark Art, it's a spoiler. Even though you've seen this place in the trailers, you're just fine. I don't know either, Thor. Just like cut to motions of me doing this. I don't know. Have a good one, Poo Spaghetti. Love you, buddy. Take care. It's okay, Kanika. You were part of the dev team. You can say that. Kanika in chat right there, who said he doesn't like this place, ooh-woo, worked on Cris Tales. He was a part of the development team. Say hi. Say hi to Kanika. It is on Apple Music. Yes, it is on Apple Music. Green Heroes, I think I blocked you on, oh, nope, damn it, I did not block you. I got your message, buddy. I got your message. Okay, now, for everyone that just heard that piece, right? Let me tell you how the process of composering works, right? You just heard that piece, right? It is the exact same thing as this piece. The exact same thing. Listen to this piece. It's the same theme. It's just, it's this theme's fight theme, right? Like, this is the theme, but then this theme took off its earrings and its rings and put its hair back and is gonna fight you. I put in that one bar of 4/4 just to let it breathe. Keeps you like suspended in the air for just a second. Yeah, exactly. Just a little fermata. That's a musical term for all of you non-music nerds out there. Get musically woke. Fermata. If I say a musical term and you don't know what I'm talking about, exclamation define. Fambo, I think I write a good battle track. Though my favorite track is the one that gets me another job, right? That's my favorite one. Whatever track gets me more employment, that's my favorite one. And then you're like, okay, composer, but can you give me that piece, but like make it sound like a sad old jazz ditty, right? Like, I want to hear that piece. I want to hear that exact same piece, but I want to hear it a little differently, right? And I'm like, I got you, homie. This is the cathedral that time forgot. Yeah, let's do 3, Charisse. If you've not drawn, do we have enough people in the queue? Do we have enough people to draw from? You are welcome, Jake Doom. You are No, that was Corn Poser. Look at your notifications better. We get confused for each other frequently. I'm from Iowa. Iowa's all about corn. Yeah, draw 3. Let's do it. If you can draw 3, let's draw 3. No, wait. What are we at? What are we at? So that gives me 3, and I've already given 1, so that's 4. You know what? After you draw 3, draw 5 more. Why not? Okay. Let's see. What else do I got? What else can I play? Oh. Hey, are there any Final Fantasy VI fans out there? Are there any like Zoso fans out there? Is there anybody out there that likes a good slam shuffle? Anyone out there that likes a good slam shuffle? Let's listen to some slam shuffle, huh? Look, Green Heroes, I'm streaming right now. I'm not going to respond to you right now, idiot. I'll respond to you after stream. Goodness gracious, man. Hold your tits. It'll be okay. Have a good one, Kike. Thanks for hanging out, buddy. Yo, have a good one, Jake. Thanks for hanging out, buddy. Okay. I think that might be it. I think there might be nothing else for you to... Oh, you know, we could listen to this one. This one's okay. This is not my favorite track in the album. Like, I feel like I could have mixed this one better. This one's got a little rock and roll to it. It starts out with a little, like, Shala's theme vibe, right? It's not bad. I wish I could have done better. I was kind of under a tight deadline to get... This is a cutscene. But it's got a little something to it. It's okay. It's okay. This one's okay. To everybody that was in here before the Barb raid, when we were going through this, I think we're gonna have to do a take two, right? I think we're gonna have to do a take two. So we're gonna have to come back on Sunday and we'll finish talking through the soundtrack for anybody that wants to, you know, kind of finish what we started here. We got off the rails on a crazy train, right? It is a fun ride. Don't get me wrong, it's a fun ride. But we'll have to come back on Sunday and we'll finish talking about the soundtrack. Yo, what's up, the motherfucking Yeti? The game's out. Soundtrack is released. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple Music. It's on Amazon. It's on YouTube. It's on Tidal. If for some reason you still think Tidal is a good idea. Well, the last 15 or 20 tracks, they're like short little cutscenes, right? So like this piece, like this is a track on the album, right? Are you ready for it? There you go. That was a track, right? So that's not really a track the way that another track is a track, right? So like this is another track, right? Right? That's another track, right? So not a track the same way that some of the other tracks are tracks. I included it all because I know there are people out there that like want to listen to everything, right? We got through before everything went to hell in a handbasket. We actually got up through 24, which I consider the first like 50 pieces of the OST to be like the main bulk of the OST, right? So we got like halfway through the main bit of it because like those last 20 tracks, a lot of them are pretty significant spoilers to discuss them in depth. And B, like I said, they're much shorter. So, you know, there's not nearly as much listening time. I really dig this piece as well. This piece gives me some goosebumps. We've been listening to all these cathedral variants, right? This is another cathedral variant. There's a cathedral in a salt mine that is also a dungeon in the game. And so this is dungeon music, but it's also that city's cathedral music. And I think this has got a pretty chill vibes. It's got a nice bass flute. Do we got any bass flute love out there? The bass flute came out as an addition. It was not part of the original. It was a future update. I think the bass flute and the muted brass came out at the same time, Glorious Rainbow. It's going to be okay. Here's the thing. If you can't DM me on Twitch or on Discord, it means that we're not in enough Discords together. It means you should probably join my exclamation Discord and hang out and come to my streams. And then you're like, some nights you're like, you know what? Barb is just yelling at his TV. Maybe I'll come watch Composer instead. And I know about this because I'm in his Discord and I saw his Go Live notification, right? Maybe I don't want to hear Barb bitch about how terrible Skyward Sword is, you know? Maybe I don't want to hear him complain about how everybody's like, Mario Maker when, you know? Maybe there's something else on Twitch to watch from somebody who's only slightly shorter and much more handsome. I'm just saying. It's a big internet out there. Also, Barb, I love you. I love you, Barb. I wouldn't be here without you, Barb. No, all of you people that are still here right now, you're the cool members of Barb's chat that don't annoy him about shit, all right? All of the annoying fucks, they already left. It's just the cool people left. Yeah, okay, so here's what I gotta do, guys. I'm all out of energy. I'm an old man. I know you wouldn't think it. 37 years old. 37. Old man, all right? So I think we're gonna wrap up stream here, but I gotta wrap up stream. I gotta go buy a bunch of copies of my own soundtrack, and then I gotta give them the codes to people, right? So I gotta do that. And then we will... We will resume the soundtrack discussion on Sunday. We'll pick up where we left off. For any of you other music nerds out there that want to hear me nerd out about, you know, the themes and the construction of the game and everything, the construction of the music for the game, we will come back to this. We will finish talking about it. Thank you so much, Naga. I appreciate it. Guys, thank you so much for all the support. Thank you for understanding the past 2 years when I had to dip out of stream because I was working on music and crazy shit was going on and I was having a panic attack and breathing into paper bags and everything. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you for the praise. Thank you for listening to the soundtrack. Go out and listen to it. Tell a friend. Everyone that won a soundtrack now has to buy 5 copies for all of your friends. Ha, got them. No, but seriously, thanks for the support, guys. Take care. We'll catch you next time.